welcome to ThePrint Softcover, our online platform dedicated to launching non-fiction books. Today, we are here with a new book, The Kaurs of 1984, The Untold, Unheard Stories of Sikh Women, authored by Sanam Sutirath Wazir and published by HarperCollins. In his compelling work, Wazir delves into the events of 1984 encompassing Operation Blue Star and the subsequent anti-Sikh riots. The book provides detailed accounts of grief, betrayal, and the loss of agency felt by Sikh women and also sheds light on the overlooked perspective of women amid the historical occurrences. Joining me is Sanam Wazir, author of the book. Welcome, Sanam. Mr. Wazir, a passionate advocate for human rights, hails from Jammu and Kashmir and is engaged in documenting historical injustice and large-scale violence through oral history. His previous works on the 1984 anti-Sikh violence have been featured prominently by Amnesty International. To begin with, Sanam, since you have done a comprehensive research on the events that took place in 1984, what inspired you to write this book, focusing on the profound suffering by survivors, particularly women?
Yeah, I was born 6 years after the anti-Sikh massacres, and but I've always felt it at home that whenever if Diwali would fall around those last days of October or the early first week of November, the Diwali wouldn't be the same because I could see my parents upset. I could see families and a lot of other Sikh families upset. And growing up, I also would say that not that none of our family members were immediately affected, but this was always a conversation. What happened in 1984, Operation Blue Star. I think it's a part of every Sikh family. This discussion happens in every Sikh family. And I still remember when, as a child, when I went to Golden Temple with my mother, and I could see her moist eyes looking at those bullet marks, in the there. And then when I got the opportunity in 2014 at Amnesty International, where the idea was to commemorate the 30 years of anti-Sikh massacre. That was actually, we've all heard that what happened, how many commissions, committees, and all have come up. But then those personal accounts. So when I met these women for the first time, there's a trauma that has transcended in generations in Delhi, in those areas when you go and meet these women, especially the so infamously there's this colony in Tilak Vihar which is now infamously called as Widow Colony. When you go there, you see that there is unending grief, trauma at every home, and that actually has encouraged me to pick this up and to actually tell their stories. And because whenever the violence happens, it just doesn't end there, right? Because there was a period that from from October 31st to November 10th, we've seen that violence happen in Delhi. But what happened after that? So it was also important to talk about that. And historically, if you see, what happens is that in any conflict, in any violence, in any such episode, women are the first casualty, and suddenly they are completely erased from that period. And that is why, for me, this was very important and personal to tell the stories of these women, that what happened with them and after 84. And also, I think this helps you to build the entire gravitas of the situation, that what exactly happened. So yeah.
Okay, so could you walk us through the journey? Like, what all did you face when you were approaching the victims and the challenges that you encountered in convincing them to share their stories? Like, for example, you have mentioned about one victim, Nirpreet Kaur, who for the very first time shared her account with you. So, how difficult was it to convince those people?
I think these conversations are not easy, neither for them, neither for me. And I still remember, Darshan Kaur. One time we were talking, and she was just holding the, playing with her dupatta, and just, very. She just did. She didn't want me to see it, but she was just wiping out her tears, and I could sense that, from her. But like I in my 10 years, these conversations they've never been easy. And I've seen every time I would go, they're very hospitable, warm people. But the moment you start discussing about 84, it just bring back all of those memories and trauma. And I also, at a lot of times I felt guilty that, you would go every time and speak about such situations. But then finally, I think it took a lot of time for trust building. And also, there have been a lot of people going and talking to these women, and they are also somewhere upset that, when you don't find justice, and the staggering delay in justice is actually, has this continuous impunity around the issue that actually have pushed these people away. So when you suddenly, don't feel that you have a trust in any institution, because these institutions have failed you. And so that took a lot of time. But when they opened up, they told me everything. And this was a very harrowing experience for me as well, and I'm sure it was extremely difficult for them. And I say it all the time that I'm guilty of just pushing them to relive that trauma when you speak about it again. So those were
Right.
very hard conversations.
Right. And how long did it take you to like complete the entire project, right from research to talking to people to penning it down in the book, everything?
I started in 2014, and I think 2021 the first draft was ready. And 21 ending, we presented the draft to the HarperCollins,
Mhm.
and that's when we were sure that the book is happening.
And you traveled massively across North India during the time.
I did. I did. I traveled to Kanpur a lot. I traveled to Delhi. I traveled to different parts of Punjab where some families have rehabilitated. Now they've moved to Punjab,
Mhm.
and almost everywhere in Delhi. I did go to Jharkhand as well to meet some families, but those families are not part of this book. I mean, because there are some families who are not very comfortable,
Mhm.
to they've of course mentioned what has happened with them. They've spoken to me, but you can't force people to.
Right.
And also, these conversations are so personal, so difficult.
Mhm.
And I remember that family telling me that by the end of the day, it's all about accountability, justice, and all of us have been through a same pattern of the cruelty, the violence these people have faced, be it in Delhi, be it anywhere in this country. That pattern remains the same.
Right. That takes me to another question. The accounts in your books are very chilling, like families witness their loved ones set ablaze, numerous instances of assault, and in a very particular chapter, Darshan Kaur's heartbreaking story of children drinking urine due to lack of clean water. How difficult was it to identify and select the major events to include in this book? I'm sure there might be many more which did not make it to the book.
I mean, there are many, many more. And like I said, that, these conversations were very, very difficult. And then also to bring them into the book again was a very, very difficult task to do. And that's why I think it took almost a decade. But because, I am very, I speak to these families very regularly.
Mhm.
And we just sat together and picked up certain things that we wanted to mention, we wanted to speak. It's not that we've left anyone. We've tried to bring in as many as we could and as many as narratives we could. But I am very, very sure that there are still many more that I might have missed or are not part of this book, because there are still many, many more stories. And I think those stories need to be told.
Right. So, amid these tragedies, did you encounter any stories where people went out of the way to help the victims despite differences of faith, class, or societal background?
Yes, many, many. I mean, there is a chapter where I've mentioned that there's this the neighbors have saved their neighbors. The lot of Hindu families have saved their neighbors. There were Muslim families who have saved their neighbors. So you see, I've always said that we are a very pluralistic society, and India, you can't fight for very long with each other, because you look at the roots we have culturally, and there is so much that is altogether same for us. So, and I've always said that we are not Indians are not those people who will fight with each other. It's I think when you have a complete state machinery behind a certain thing, right,
Hmm.
and a complete massacre was orchestrated, and like right today, like you have WhatsApp, which feeds you so much, right, which feeds you so many false narratives,
Hmm.
and of course people fall prey to it, but that doesn't mean that everybody is a bad human being. So there were stories of hope, there were so many positive stories where neighbors have helped each other.
Hmm.
But yes, majority, uh, there are instances where neighbors have also attacked their neighbors.
Right. Right. Okay. And apart from it, there are a few victims who have also drawn, I mean, like, tried to compare what happened in 1984 to the times when it was the partition, post partition times, right? So, can we draw a parallel between the 1947 and 1984 when it comes to the gender violence in specific?
Right. I mean, I remember Darshan Kaur. We were sitting. This was one chilly winter afternoon, and I was at her home, and she said that my grandmother used to tell us all these harrowing stories of partition. That what happened with them, what happened with a lot of women, how families have given poison to their daughters, how their own families they didn't want all these kinds of gender based violence that happened with women during that particular period. She said that we were always we would get shocked when our grandmother would tell us these stories, but she said when I witnessed this for the first time in 1984, I thought there is no difference between 84 and 1947. And she said, that actually pushed me to point to think that am I even an Indian citizen?
Mhm.
Because if the institutions which have taken oath to protect me, protect a citizen of this country, and if all of those institutions have failed, then are we really Indians? And then this took another 40 years, and these people still have not received closure. So for a lot of women whose families have seen partition, I don't think 1984 was any different, because you know I have also grown up in a family of refugees. I've also heard stories from my grandparents what has happened during the partition of India, and the same stories. When I went to Delhi and speak to these women, especially about the gender-based violence, it was no different. It was no different.
Right. So, during while I was reading your book, I came across that you had a word with journalist Seema Mustafa also, like on this particular event. And she recounts an experience from 1984, mentioning that she saw approximately 200 bodies in the trains arriving in Delhi. Could you elaborate this incident?
So there were rumors, right? And there were multiple rumors doing around that, like partition, there are trains coming. But during the partition, also this happened. That trains are coming from Pakistan loaded with the dead bodies. And during the '84, what has happened is there was a rumor that the trains coming from Pakistan the trains coming from Punjab have dead bodies of so many people. And I think that rumor plus the rumor that Sikhs have poisoned water pipes in Delhi, those all of these rumors, I think, have just instigated the entire situation. And you see, these rumors cannot travel. If you remember, I mean, we all know that back then there was no internet. Back then there was no social media like we have today.
Hmm.
So how do you think these rumors traveled so fast if there was no state support for it?
Hmm.
So that has led to so many people, losing their lives. And Seema has actually encountered that very. She's told that she was for the whole day at the railway station, and she'd seen dead bodies, and not just from at the station. There is a photo. I think I remember the name of the. I'm forgetting the name of the photographer, where there are two dead bodies in the carriage. I think the carriage pull or something, that thing has two dead bodies, and I'm sure these 200 are just the number she had counted. I'm sure there were many more in other trains.
Right, right. And also, since like you had a word with a lot of people, every woman who endured the trauma of 1984 echoes a common sentiment that the past cannot be forgotten. After hearing the details of the period that followed Operation Blue Star till Operation Black Thunder, Did they share any account of what could have been done to lessen their suffering?
I think when we specifically talk about anti-Sikh massacre, uh, none of these people are saying that they want to forget or forgive. All of these people are looking for closure, and that closure comes with acknowledgement. That closure comes with that closure comes with justice. That closure comes with accountability. But if you see that staggering delays in the 1984 has become an example in many other cases. So what these people are looking for is justice. They are looking for they're looking for some kind of end to this pattern of impunity. That's closure for these people. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of time, you go and speak to a lot of people. The only thing they say is that these people, the victims and survivors, have been compensated. Now, my question to all of them is that in these families, they've lost some families have lost 5 people, some have lost 10, some have lost 12, and you are saying a compensation can actually be an answer to all of this? No, I don't know why they're not. Why we are not talking about reparations? It's
Right.
the 3 generations who have suffered. So let's say in the case of Darshan Kaur, or in the case of let's say Bhagi Kaur, so all of these women have survived it, right? Then because suddenly these women come to the workforce, these women have said that the second generation, their children, have suffered the most because they were living all their lives in the trauma. They've seen their fathers being killed in front of them, right? And there's this fear of backlash as a minority that these people have grown up with. And now, because the second generation has that kind of dealing with trauma, when you go and meet the third generation, you will see that they also have a very similar memory of what exactly happened with their grandfather. And because of what happened with their grandfather, their father is going through this trauma. And then that basically transcended to these people, because if you look at it, it also affects you economically, right? If you're spending your life with a trauma and a constant trauma without any kind of support, and if any government in the world thinks that support to these people is just rehabilitating them in a one room home, and that's a favor, I'm sorry, that's not. It's a duty of every government.
Right.
And that too, they've failed. They've constantly failed in delivering justice.
Right. So, when you came across all the episodes, can you just share any one episode that really touched you, and any particular statement by any of the victims that actually left a mark?
Oh yeah. So uh, that was actually when I was trying to speak to somebody, and this woman did not speak to me initially, and she said, "मैं 84 की लड़की हूँ."
The Cause of 1984 that you mentioned.
Yes,
Okay, that is where you
and
got the idea for the title of the book.
yes, because she did not speak to me for very long, and after many months, it
Hmm.
was raining one day, and she was standing at the door of her home. She said, "I remember her words. तुसी बैठोगे?" And that's when the conversation began. And she said that मैं 84 की लड़की हूँ. I can't tell you what happened with me. And then I asked her. Then it took another year. It took a lot of time to speak to her, and then she opened up. This woman was gang raped, and again I remember her words. She told her mother, "Mummy, मैंने छड़ के ना जाई." So that actually stuck with me, and I'm still very. It's a very emotional thing when you sit with victims and survivors, and they tell you what exactly happened with them, and especially a victim of violence like this. And this woman was gang raped, and then when she opened up, she told me everything. That conversation was so difficult that I don't know that I just sometimes wonder that what kind of strength and resilience these women have, because I could not sleep for many days after hearing those words.
Right. I'm sure it
And
must have been
a
very
lot of times, even now, when anybody talks to me about this, it's very difficult for me. It's very difficult for me.
absolutely, I can relate. And this takes me to my last question. Did the media do its role during the events that unfolded in 1984?
There are few people, I would say, yes, they have.
Mhm.
But if you'll ask me that, I would also say that there are people. There were journalists like Seema. There were journalists like Harminder Kaur who've tried their best. There are many other journalists as well who've tried their best to to keep the memories alive in terms of like the photographs from Ram Rahman or Ashok Wahi or many other journalists have done a lot of work. But then the question, if you're saying that, was that enough? I would say no.
Right.
But then we all know how the newsroom functions, right? We all know how the newsroom functions. So I don't blame those journalists as well, because I know, I've been a journalist, I know how the newsroom functions.
All right, Sanam, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you all the very best.